Today you're going to be learning a little bit about what life was like in Sumer back in ancient Mesopotamia. If you can see here, you're going to be watching my video lesson, which you're doing now, and follow along in the book pages that I have. And as you're listening and reading, you're going to fill out the section 2 and 3 note pages. Then after that, you have the Epic of Gilgamesh that you're going to read and answer some questions. So if we click here on the note pages, then click Edit Presentation, Edit in Browser. The first thing I always do is click View, Zoom, 100%. And then at the top of this page, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to do some matching for vocabulary words. So there's the words here, and then you'll match the vocab words on the right. But there, you'll just click in the box and type in the letter. And then down here, the first part here, we have a little bit of review about where Mesopotamia is, what it's like. And here, we're going to talk about farming and how it helped the farmers. And we have a second page here talking about writing and how it's one of the inventions and advancements that the Sumerians came up with. And then we'll talk about other advancements that they came up with. And then down below, I'll have you make a list of 5 Sumerian advancements or achievements. So over here, just as a reminder, what does Mesopotamia mean? So Mesopotamia means land between 2 rivers. We talked about that in one of the first lessons. It's Greek for land between 2 lessons. And I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I just click home, highlight it, and I'm going to change it to 12 so that it'll fit in there. So Mesopotamia means the land between the 2 rivers. And then on what rivers did Mesopotamia develop? What are those 2 rivers that it's between? Give me a second, try and think of it. And those 2 rivers are the Tigris and Euphrates. And down here we have where it says, what is the Fertile Crescent? This is one of the vocab words from last lesson. And the Fertile Crescent is an arc-shaped area of fertile land in southern Asia. It's that crescent area that Mesopotamia was located in, where the first settlements were. And this one, we're going to skip. So you're not even going to worry about filling this one. I decided to skip that one in class. Now we're going to come over here, now that we're reminding ourselves what Mesopotamia means and where the Fertile Crescent is, we're going to start reading about farming. So we're going to take a look at our book pages, and we're going to look here at farming in cities. So as we're reading about the farming in cities, we're going to be listening to how irrigation helped farmers, what effects irrigation had on farming, then how might big construction projects like the building of canals and large buildings lead to laws and government. We'll start reading here. Although Mesopotamia had fertile soil, farming wasn't easy there. The region received little rain. This meant the water levels in the Tigris and Euphrates rivers depended on how much rain fell in eastern Asia Minor, where the 2 rivers began. When a great amount of water or rain fell there, water levels got very high. Flooding destroyed crops, killed livestock, and washed away homes. But when water levels were too low, crops dried up. Farmers knew they needed a way to control the river's flow. So in Mesopotamia, the water and the rain was unpredictable. So sometimes it'd be not enough water and everything would dry up. Other times it'd be too much water and the flooding would wash away everything they had. So they had to figure out a way to control the water. To solve their problems, Mesopotamians used irrigation, a way of supplying water to an area of land. To irrigate their land, they dug out large storage basins to hold water supplies. Then they dug canals, which were human-made waterways that connected 3 basins to a network of ditches. These ditches brought water to the fields. To protect their fields from flooding, farmers built up the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates. These built-up banks held back floodwaters even when river levels were high. So to keep the rivers from flooding or being too dry, they created an irrigation system by using canals. So here you can see where the river is flooding, just kind of going wherever it wants. And so then they dug these canals and these walls to hold the banks of the river. So that way they could control and make the water go where they wanted it to. That allowed them to get water to their fields. So looking at our note sheet, how did irrigation help the farmers? It controlled where the river water went. So they had the right amount of water going to their fields. They weren't getting too little water, they weren't getting too much water. It was going right to their fields where they wanted it. So they figured out how to control the water, and they were able to get the water where they want. And so what was the result of that? What was the effects that irrigation had on farming settlements? Now we're going to read to see how this irrigation affected their farming. So now we're on food surpluses. Irrigation increased the amount of food farmers were able to grow. In fact, farmers could produce a food surplus or more than they needed. Farmers also used irrigation to water grazing areas for cattle and sheep. As a result, Mesopotamians ate a variety of foods. Fish, meat, wheat, barley, and dates were plentiful. Because irrigation made farmers more productive, fewer people needed to farm. Some people became free to do other jobs. As a result, new occupations developed. For the first time, people could become crafters, religious leaders, and government workers. The type of arrangement in which each worker specializes in a particular task or job is called a division of labor. Having people available to work on different jobs meant that the society could accomplish more. So we're going to look back at our notes. Because they had irrigation, their crops were able to grow better, which meant they were able to then have a surplus. And if you remember, surplus means more than they need. So they're able to have more food than they need. And because of that, so they were able to grow. They grew a surplus of food. We're going to put number 1 in front of that. And because of that, less farmers were needed. People could then have other jobs. I'm going to make this smaller so we can read it. So they were able to grow a surplus of food, meaning they were able to have more food than they needed. Less farmers were needed then, and so then people could have other jobs. So that we're going to talk about as they start these other jobs, how might big construction projects, like the building of canals and large buildings, lead to laws and government. So we're here, large projects. Large projects, such as constructing buildings and digging irrigation systems, required special workers, managers, and organization. To complete these projects, the Mesopotamians needed structure and rules. Structure and rules could be provided by laws and government. So we're looking back here. So now that they were trying to work on these big projects, they had to have structure. So the projects needed structure, which means things done a certain way, and organization, meaning, having something be first and then something second, and, having things a certain way. That way it's not just chaos. So the projects needed that, which required laws and government. You needed, someone providing that management, someone providing that structure, saying, hey, this is what we need to do first, this is what we need to do second. So the projects then required the structure and organization, which required laws and government. So now we're going to go to the next part where we're going to start talking about advancements. So if we're going to go back, first we're going to kind of review about the cuneiform. So how did they write? They had paper and pencil? No, they wrote on clay tablets. They wrote on clay tablets, and their language was cuneiform. Let me make this one smaller. So now, remembering what a scribe was and why were scribes important? Why were scribes important? Well, not everyone could go to school. So scribes were needed to read and write the language. At this point, not everybody was able to read the language. So they needed people who could do that. So they could write down the important information. They could, record transactions, record history. And then before cuneiform, they were using pictographs. And so now cuneiform allowed them to express different syllables to express more complex ideas like joy. So cuneiform represented syllables now instead of pictures. Now we're going to read about some of the other advancements and achievements that the Sumerians had. So first, I want to talk about the most important technical development. And we're going to talk about something they did with clock. And here it's going to be your opinion of which one you think is the most important. And we're going to come over here and talk about the arts. So first, let's talk about the advancements and inventions. So we're going to go to the next page here. Talk about the technical advances. Writing was not the only great Sumerian invention. These early people made other advances and discoveries. One of Sumer's most important developments was the wheel. So there we have our first one. The most important technical development was the wheel. Without the wheel, because of the wheel, they were the first people to build wheeled vehicles, including carts and wagons. Also using the wheel, Sumerians invented a device that spins clay as a craftsperson shapes it into bowls. This device is called a potter's wheel. The plow was another important Sumerian invention. Pulled by oxen, plows broke through hard clay soil of Sumer to prepare it for planting. This technique greatly increased farm production. The Sumerians also invented a clock that used falling water to measure time. Sumerian advances improved daily life in many ways. Sumerians built sewers under streets. They learned to use bronze to make stronger tools and weapons. They even produced makeup and glass jewelry. Math and sciences. Another area in which Sumerians developed was math. In fact, they developed a math system based on number 60. Based on this system, they divided a circle into 360 degrees, which you guys may be talking about the pie charts a little bit, which is kind of the same idea. Developing a year into 12 months, a factor of 60, was another Sumerian idea. So the 12-month calendar we have came from the Sumerians. Sumerians also calculated the areas of triangles, or rectangles and triangles. Sumerian scholars studied science too. They wrote long lists to record their study of the natural world. These tablets included the names of thousands of animals, plants, and minerals. The Sumerians also made advances in medicine. They used ingredients from animals, plants, and minerals to produce healing drugs. Items used in these medicines included milk, turtle shells, figs, and salt. The Sumerians even cataloged their medical knowledge, listing treatments according to symptoms and body parts. We're going to look now back at our note sheet. And what advance in math do we use every day when we look at a clock? We're measuring something. They came up with measuring. When we look at a clock, we measure time. Which invention or advancement do you think was most important? So I want you to choose something from that list that we just read through, or from the book passage we just read through. You're going to list it, and you're going to tell me why you think that one is most important. And now we're going to talk about the arts. So over here, the arts of Sumer. The Sumerian skill and field of art, metalwork, and architecture, the science of building, are well known to us. The ruins of great buildings and fine works of art have provided us with wonderful examples of Sumerians' creativity. So as we read the rest, we're going to read about what was at the center of most Sumerian cities. How were the homes of rich similar? That one we're actually going to skip. We skipped that in class, so don't worry about filling out that second one. And then the third part here, what different types of art did the Sumerians create? So most Sumerian rulers lived in large palaces. Other rich Sumerians had two-story homes with many as dozen rooms. Most people, however, lived in smaller one-story houses. These homes had 6 or 7 rooms arranged around a small courtyard. Large and small houses stood side by side along the narrow, unpaved streets of the city. Bricks made of mud were the home's main building blocks. City centers were dominated by their temples, the largest and most impressive buildings in Sumer. A ziggurat, a pyramid-shaped temple, however, rose above each city. Outdoor staircases led to a platform and a shrine at the top. Some architects added columns to make temples more attractive. Now here, so that was architecture. Now we're going to read about the arts. Sumerian sculptors produced many fine works. Among them were the statues of gods created for temples. Sumerian artists also sculpted small objects out of ivory and rare woods. Sumerian pottery is known for more than its quantity than its quality. Potters turned out many items, but fewer works of beauty. They're just trying to get more products out of it and making them look nice. Jewelry was a popular item in Sumer. The jewelers of this region made many beautiful works out of imported gold, silver, and gems. Earrings and other items found in the region show that Sumerian jewelers knew advanced methods for putting gold pieces together. Cylinder seals are perhaps Sumer's most famous works of art. These small objects were stone cylinders engraved with designs. When rolled over clay, the designs would leave behind their imprint. Each seal left its own distinct imprint. As a result, a person could show ownership of a container by rolling the cylinder over the container's wet clay surface. People could also use cylinder seals to sign documents or to decorate other clay objects. Some seals showed battle scenes. Others displayed worship rituals. Some were highly decorative, hundreds of carefully cut gems. They required great skill to make. So if we look over here, we can see one of these cylinder seals. So it's a cylinder stone that had a drawing etched into it, and then you'd roll it over the clay, and it would make that design on it, whatever you had on the seal. The Sumerians also enjoyed music. Kings and temples hired musicians to play on special occasions. Sumerian musicians played reed pipes, drums, tambourines, and stringed instruments called lyres. So here's a lyre. It looks very similar to a harp. Children learned songs in school. People sang hymns to the gods and kings. Music and dance provided entertainment in marketplaces and homes. So we're now going to look over at this note sheet. Over here, what was at the center of most Sumerian cities? What was at the center of most Sumerian cities? So that in the center is where they had the building where they worshiped the god. It was the temple, and it was called a ziggurat. From behind there, we'll put temple, so we remember that is a temple. And then remember, we're skipping this one. And then what different types of art did they create? Well, they had the pottery. They had the cylinder seals. They had jewelry and music. So, I mean, they had several different things that they did for the arts. So now that we have our note sheet finished, we're going to go ahead and we're going to click close. Once you have it all the way filled out. Then you're going to click on the next assignment here, the Epic of Gilgamesh. So this was one of the works of art literature that they wrote. So an epic is a long poem that tells a story. So we're going to click Edit Presentation, Edit in Browser. And for your homework, you're going to read the Epic of Gilgamesh. After reading it, there's a few questions about the epic, the poem. So you'll start reading, since it's told in our language versus Sumerian, it's not quite the same poem that we think of. It's not like rhyming words. It's more of a long or a short story. So you'll start reading here about Gilgamesh, who was one of the Sumerian kings, and his story about an adventure he went on. So you read the first page, come here on the second page, finish the story. And then you have questions. So who was Gilgamesh? You'll look in there reading and tell me who Gilgamesh was. You're going to tell me, why was he praying to the gods? And then why did the gods create Enkidu? And then you also need to describe what Enkidu was like. What did he look like? What were people afraid of him? Did people like him? Describing Enkidu. And then how did the brawl or fight between Gilgamesh and Enkidu end? What happened after, like how did the fight end? And why do you think his subjects, so Gilgamesh's subjects, the people he ruled over, wanted the gods to send Gilgamesh more friends? And I say quote friends, so people that the gods were making and sending to Gilgamesh. Remember, think about, they seemed happy and Gilgamesh and Enkidu left the city-state. So you're going to type your answers in there for those 5 questions after reading the story of Gilgamesh. Once you get this and those notes completed, then you click turn it in. And again, if you have questions, send me an email, send me a message or remind, or send me a message here on the chat. I'll